Hey, everybody. Let's make sure that all is well with our broadcast here this evening. It appears to be so. Live from Denver. It is Friday night. Welcome to Critical Conversations for this 19th of July in the year of our Lord 2024. May our times continue to be interesting, as they say, as everybody comes on board here. I see YouTube has upped its game a little bit in the graphics department with Juliana, a member for 12 months. Yay! Of course, YouTube memberships are a wonderful way to help support the channel, so you all can always do that. And I see the usual suspects and critics in the comment section. Hey, everybody. As usual, I am always so happy to be joined by you for live on Friday night. You have many viewing and streaming options available to you, and we are always heartwarmed that you choose us. As you can see, I am not joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa, this week. She is taking the night off. She's feeling a little tired, and with the heat and and everything else and all the job stuff and everything, totally makes sense. So we're giving her the evening off, and so that's what's happening. And she's chilling with Benson. Speaking of, let's go ahead without a lot of ado. Let's go on to check out our Snuggles Not Struggles cam. I was particularly happy with it this week. This is our Benson cam, just from this afternoon, our little bundle of furry joy. And he is, there he is climbing all over Mel there and then coming out and shaking himself off. He is just being abnormally, horribly, grotesquely cute right now. With this, you're going to see him do his little cat stretch imitation here. And this is what we have to deal with all day, is this beast in our house, staring us down and demanding our attention. And it's, frankly, very, very hard for me to not give it. This guy just is, he's an attention hound. Let's put it that way. So that's my there's our little attention hound there. Yeah, chilling on the floor. All right, let's move back to reality here. So there's our stress reducer. That is for sure. He should actually be on my list. I have papers this evening. I have pages from which to go over some things tonight, but I thought first we might check in and see how everybody is doing. What's the feeling out there? I'm a little wondering. I don't usually just sort of straight up ask y'all how you all are doing, but I'm honestly curious. Things are. I talk to my friends right now, and there's a lot of attention on politics. It's that time of the season. Every 4 years, we are in this stress mode of this time period. The summer of an election year, moving into, the fall is always like the nail-biting time as far as I can tell. I've lived through 2 of these now. And I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and maybe I put more attention on this than other people do. And if so, please let me know. I'd like to know that as well. But I was talking with a friend of mine who came over, and we played some games last night. And of course, we got to talking about this stuff. And I said that having been in the Sea Org as a cult member, none of this was important. And I wasn't paying any attention to hardly any of it other than what I could read on an LA Times headline or see, in the newspaper stand, in other words, or perhaps see, some Sea Org members would get the paper in the morning and then it would kind of distribute around in the main mess as bits and pieces got taken here and there. And so you could sometimes see the news that way as long as, OSA hadn't come and grabbed all the papers. If there was something horrible going on with Scientology, then of course OSA wouldn't let us see it. But most of the time that wasn't the case. And so that was kind of how I kept up with what was going on. And the entire Obama administration, the beginning of his election cycle, that whole thing, I wasn't paying much attention at all. You know, the whole hope and change and be the change you want to see and all that. Yeah, not wasn't in my world. I was on the RPF. So then, so paying attention to the last couple election cycles here for president and for the federal stuff, it definitely seems to me that there's a kind of, if you try to stay sensitive to or pay attention to, the sort of tone or feeling of the world around you. And I try to do that a little bit. And I don't mean some spiritual keep out my tentacles kind of thing, but through what I read and I'm exposed to. And I see usually around this time a lot of increased stress, especially in the media, a lot of short tempers, a lot of demonstrations and video showing that. And you get this idea that stress levels are a little higher. And so that's what made me think, in addition to other recent events that we have talked about on this show, that have some people on the left incredibly worried right now, and even people on the right very worried right now. I'm referring to the SCOTUS decision and the talks that we've had about Project 2025 and all the kind of crazy stuff that goes on the extreme end of the GOP. Anyway, so people seem to have some attention, some stress on that. And so I thought that was why we might talk about that stuff this week. But let me see what you guys are saying here. Kind of stressed about the heat. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a whole nother layer, isn't it? The weather, the crazy ass weather that's going on, and the kind of, for some of us, I don't know what you guys are seeing it. Again, tell me, but what I'm seeing is sort of proof right in front of me in my backyard, literally, of what they've been talking about for many, many years now, about this climate change thing. The fact that the weather and the patterns of weather and the whole system of our planet is undergoing some pretty big changes right now, and it feels a little random, and weather being what it is. So that's kind of what it feels like to me. And that only, if that's true, and it indicates that the scientists do know what they're talking about, have known what they've been talking about, then that only means that this heat is here to stay, and that things are perhaps a little worrisome. And we better hope that our necessity being the mother of invention, that perhaps some wisecrackers are getting on this, or are already on this, or have been on this, and are coming up with some technological solutions for us. Because if anybody's counting on humans to change their behavior in order to fix this, to some degree, but humans don't change until they are forced to change when it comes to habits and behaviors on a broad scale. I think we all saw and see and are aware of that much more so since COVID. I don't mean to put myself forward as some sociology expert, but that's where my mind goes when I start thinking about the temperatures and stuff. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, stressed out about the south of the border, and you're up in Canada, Polar. I get it. Yeah, politics are rough. Yeah, I decided to stay off the news. X-Cyan asked me, am I hopeful about our future? I am always hopeful about our future, but I'm always, worried about the shorter term situation. In terms of the long term, which is how I tend to think of things in terms of the long term, the medium, and then the short term. Short term being like, days, weeks, longer term being years, and long term being, eons, right? I'm very, very hopeful for humanity on the long term, but like Carlin says, the planet's going to be fine. It's we aren't right on the short term, and on the medium term, I am concerned, and I am concerned on the political, ideological front, and I'm concerned on the climate front. One following the other. I'm more concerned about the ideological problems we're having and the divides right now, the social psycho problems of that. Are what consume my attention because of the nature of how I look at the world and the way I think about things, sort of psych oriented. I see people and I see their emotions, and I see the the rancor that flies back and forth, even coming out of my mouth sometimes. I'm just like, my God, where's that coming from? It's coming from some deep emotions, which are coming from some deep worry and anxiety. And I have to wonder sometimes about how much that's induced versus how much that's a real reflection of reality. And that's where I get my hope from, is the fact that I could be, and probably am, in fact, I'm sure I am, misperceiving, you know, just how big or small of a problem or these various problems are they. I know I'm probably not getting it right any more than, like I love to say, you know, if you think you know what's coming in the future, well, you're wrong. You don't know. Nobody knows. Every single person who predicts the future gets it wrong. So that's kind of how I think about things. And I do think, for that reason, that there is lots of reasons. There's just as many reasons to be hopeful as there are reasons not to be, given the fact that we have no certainty whatsoever about what's coming. We only have signs, red flags, green flags, indications, right? Indicators of things, symptoms of things. These can be changed. We can learn. We have learned from the past before. There's no reason we can't learn from the past again and not repeat the mistakes of the past. That's my hope. So, yeah. Would I be okay living in a monarchy? I don't know that I'd have a choice if it comes to that, but I hope not. And when, Trump says he'll deport the 12 plus millions of illegals, how's that possible? It's really not, short of a years-long effort to create internment camps and railroads down to the Mexico or whatever, or where are they going to go, or how are we going to do this? You know, it would look ugly. There's no version of that does not look very, very, SS-like, that doesn't look horrible. Because it is horrible. It's a horrible idea. The idea of rounding people up like that in mass and deporting millions of people cannot look any other way than exactly how you imagine it would have to look. And we don't want any part of that. America has engaged in those kinds of activities in the past, going back, a few times. We have grown culturally. We keep telling ourselves we've grown past that. So it's time to put our money where our mouth is, as far as I'm concerned, on that, right? It's really time. We need to not support anyone or anything that wants to do that. That's how we prevent it, as we go, no, don't do that. Better with Charles III than Trump. Yeah, oh, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, sure, when it comes to Charles III, but who's Charles IV? That's the problem. It's not Charles III that bothers me. It's the fourth or the fifth, and how, and what if something's wrong with them, and there's no voting power, right, in a monarchy. So exactly. See, the thing is that these are, as One Love says, don't know anybody who agrees with these ideas. Of course you don't. People who watch my show don't. People in the main don't. And I wanted to point something out about this. Actually, so this is as good a time as any to bring this point up. I was thinking about this, and it's not a point you're unfamiliar with, but it bears repeating, that I had a conversation this week on my podcast with a pastor, and a very, very wonderful man. And it was such a contrast talking with him compared to what you see or hear on mega pastors and televangelists and that style of preacher and evangelicism and all of that, compared to your more quiet, thoughtful, helpful, doing community work, actually helping people. You'll hear about it in the podcast. It's a really great show this week. And in looking at that, it of course was so clear to me so quickly, in reminding me again, slapping me in the face, that here's a man who doesn't have a YouTube channel that I'm aware of, certainly isn't trying to make a name for himself in any significant way, and yet he is absolutely out there doing the Lord's work, so to speak, by actually getting in there and not even trying to convert people. Like I said, you'll see the show. And I contrasted how many people out there like him are there all over the United States, all over the world maybe, but certainly all over the US, certainly all over Canada, who are just doing the work, just getting the job done, not looking for a name, not looking for recognition, not looking for followers or likes or shares, but are just out there doing the work. And we talk so much, I've said so many times, that most of the work that gets done in the ex-Scientology space, you guys are not ever going to see. It's off camera. It's the help that we give through the Aftermath Foundation, or through the education or consultation, or the books that we put out there that people read, and all of that kind of stuff that goes on off camera, or the legal work. Oh my God. So I contrast that fact and the number of people involved in that kind of work with the numbers and reality of the awful that is thrown into our face. And I think to myself that we get a sort of double skewed view of the bad actors, especially in places like religion, where the baddies, if you will, the immoral, the money chasers, the clout chasers, the likes and share chasers, those are, in and of itself, it's a reward, admiration, love, awe, money, 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 money. Great. But is it helping anybody? Does it claim to help people and then not help people? You bet it does. And that's where it gets wrong, and where the morality of this goes from gray to black. And it becomes people taking advantage of other people for their money, for their awe and their good feelings and all of that. And people take advantage of situations like that. Your Tony Robbins, your Joel Osteens, your mega pastors, right? Your Jerry Falwells. So that's where I have a problem with it. And those baddies tend to gravitate to the camera and make spectacles of themselves, instead of going out and doing any good in the world. And so we get a skewed view of too many of them, and we don't see, they eclipse completely any news or information, or very, very little news or information that comes to us here and there through blogs and local news articles and interactions we have with individuals personally, and going to your local church and this kind of thing. All of that gets obscured and sort of tidal waved by this tidal wave of badness, of awful, that comes out of these bad actors. And they are attention-seeking people. So they're clamoring for our attention. Even if we hate them and despise them, they'd rather have that than nothing. And so I think we all can maybe get, again, that very skewed availability bias, or I think it's called availability heuristic, where you're judging things based on how available it is to you, as to that's how much it really exists in the world, when it doesn't. And that's a very long explanation for the answer, another answer to why I still feel hope. I still feel hopeful, is because I think there's an awful lot of silent good out there that's outweighing this very, very noisy bad that we get thrown in our face all the time. All right, we can do a couple of these, I guess. I cannot say that I have specifically, I've posted a graphic that sort of compares Project 2025 and Agenda 47, Donald Trump's specific political agenda, as stated by him and his campaign, is what I understand that to be. And so, but I couldn't do a line by line for you or something like that. I know there are many comparisons and some contrasts. And if David Miscavige was president, how would the U.S. look like? Well, it would depend on how much, obviously we still have some degree of checks and balances, but, if David Miscavige had unfettered access to the U.S. military, to the nuclear codes, and to, operational intel from around the world, I cringe to imagine what the world would look like under, the reign of terror that man might institute. You really got to think about the power of that office and what it's capable of. And now that the restraints and gloves have been taken off by the Supreme Court as far as, accountability, I mean, it really is going to depend an awful lot on the character of the person who's in that chair as to what's going to happen there. And David Miscavige has got no character at all. The man is a complete narcissistic, ego. His ego is the size of a little tiny, pebble. It's tiny, and he's got all this built-up fluff all around it that he calls a personality. He's a very, very complicated and fucked up guy. and the last thing we would want is somebody that unstable and violent, straight up violent, with his peers. See, he's so not psychologically fit for the office that it's just simply a terrifying thought. Miscavige I'm talking about here. I might be also talking about other people, but I'm certainly talking about Miscavige. So yeah. And as far as I know, we are still missing, or there are still controversies connected with this missing with the classified documents. So yeah. Okay, guys. So let's go ahead and get into talking about stress, because I wanted to, in the direction of hope and positivity and wanting to help. I feel like I spent a couple episodes the last few weeks really, like venting and expressing a lot of my concerns and fears about what's going on these days with certain things that should be mainstream in our face. We should be thinking about this kind of stuff. Now, it occurs to me in looking at the Project 2025 stuff, for example, that, gaining a little bit more perspective, that there has been a project, something or other every year, I'm told, since 1973 when the Heritage Foundation began. And these guys have been trying to manipulate public policy ever since then. It's just now we know about it. And there is something to kind of go, oh, right, that just because you just learned about a thing doesn't necessarily mean that it just came into existence, or that it hasn't been affecting or not affecting your life in any significant way all this time. If you never heard or read anything about the Church of Scientology ever, and none of this had ever touched your life. None of the ex-Scientology world had ever really touched your life for whatever reason. Would you know anything about it at all? No, you wouldn't. And would it still be a dangerous human trafficking organization that really should be investigated and prosecuted by the government? Yeah, it would still be that. It always has been that ever since the 1950s. It's always been there doing that, right? But we didn't know about it. So now that we do, we can kind of freak out because it's like, oh my God, what is this? This is horrifying. Yeah, it always has been. The Heritage Foundation has never been an organization that has been putting forward policy that is in the best interests of me and thee. It has always been about them and their little bubble world of Christian extremism, and it's nasty, nasty stuff. I again will invite you to go back in the catalog here on my show and look up my Sensibly Speaking podcasts, specifically the ones that I did with Dr. Clint Haycock. And there are probably, I think, 3 or 4 shows that we did. Maybe I should put a little playlist together. And check out all the stuff we've been talking about. It's interesting stuff. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. And even my, anyway, yeah, and there's more coming. Okay. Yeah. Is the Heritage Foundation more influential than AIPAC? I think the latter owns Congress and the president, no matter who it is. Let me just make sure I know what you're referring to. Oh. Yeah, the Israeli thing you're talking about. Okay. AIPAC is the pro-Israeli, according to the AIPAC website, it's, American Israeli PAC. Okay, got it. Bud is asking me, is the Heritage Foundation more influential than AIPAC? I think the latter owns Congress and the president, no matter who it is. I think you're right about that second statement. Owns is probably a harsh word, but I would say certainly, we could say strongly influences. And if you look at the number of things that strongly influence the United States president to do things, it's a short list. There's not lots and lots and things that strongly influence the president, in my opinion, my take. Again, I'm no poli-sci major, but this is my take on it. And so, yeah, there's our Israeli allyship. There's a laundry list of interests as to why we maintain that relationship. And I'm not sitting here saying in any of this that I agree or disagree. I think it's complicated as to why we maintain allyship with Israel and support them, to the tune of, the billions of dollars of investment over all the decades that we've invested in Israel, and why we do that, and the region, and what the significance of that is. And, now the difficulties that are blown up in front of everybody that have been present this entire time with Israel and Gaza and the conflicts there. This is, America drew a line in the sand. We said we're on Israel's side, period, end of story. That's whose side we're on. And so that's where this country goes. I don't think that the Heritage Foundation is more influential than that. No, not at all. No, not at that level. It's influential, but it's not that influential, right? Because if it was, then I don't think we'd be in Israel the same way. I think things would be different in terms of varying degrees of foreign policy and how we go about doing things that way. I think there would be a lot more of a Christian slant to our foreign policy, which would manifest in different ways in different parts of the world. And I'm not the expert on all this stuff. I'm not claiming to be, just giving you my impressions of it. Okay, and what are my biggest concerns? My biggest concerns are where the climate's going and what we're going to do about it. That's kind of what I've mentioned already, actually, on the show here so far. Is I'm very, very concerned about the longer term. That's the kind of decades forward look. I'm not worried about it for next summer. But I am worried about where things are going to be in 10, 20, 30 years, and while I'm still alive and while people I love are growing and making their own families. My nephew, my son, my niece, what world are they going to have? I'm very worried about that. And just purely temperature-wise, food availability-wise, job-wise, there's a lot of factors at play there. And then the other thing, of course, on the shorter term is the creeping fascism of the Christian nationalism in the United States and the Trump problem, right? The fact that Trump brings with him this whole baggage of these very incentivized extreme thinkers when it comes to economics and finance, when it comes to social policy, and when it comes to separation of church and state. These are very extreme thinkers, and they want and are going to demand extreme action. And they've already begun that agenda. It's already rolling forward. It's not a fantasy. I'm not making anything up here. The abortion thing, that was a part of this whole scheme. Is part and parcel of it was strip abortion rights. And you can see the draconian measures that are happening in certain states like Louisiana, Georgia, I think Arkansas. There are these anti-abortion laws going into play that are very stringent, that kind of thing, right? So I'm concerned about the stripping away of human rights and civil rights that we have fought decades, centuries for minorities. And all the way up to people like me, because I'm on the wrong side of the political fence, right? What happens to even the white women and men who are saying or exhibiting the wrong behavior, right? You're not saluting fast enough, that kind of thing. I've been in that world. It is a horrible place to live. So, so you don't want to go there. And we have the ability still to stop it. We still have that ability. And I am still very hopeful. And I wish I knew better. The other thing I'm very, very concerned about is who the left is going to end up forwarding for us. Because is it going to be Biden or is it going to be somebody else? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know. I could see either one being the right or the wrong answer. I can see, but Biden moves forward and then has a heart attack in August or something. Or or doesn't move forward, and we get somebody else that nobody wants, and then it's even worse. Or you know what I mean? Like I am so on edge right now with all of that, and I try not to let it ruin my life, because now we're going to go from the Q&A forum portion of this show into these points I wanted to go over with you guys, because some of these things I think you might know, some of them you might not, but I wanted to go over them or remind you of them, because here's the thing. We're going to have some stress. We got stress now. We're going to continue to have stress in our life, whether we win or lose, however you see it. Come November, we're going to be stressing out. Come next year, come the next year, we're going to have reasons to be freaking out, to have some anxiety, to have some stress, right? Anxiety is a body condition, where you're on edge, your muscles are tensing up, and sweat, and you're having adrenaline reactions, and there's fear, and there's kind of a inward looking and yet external fear. Anxiety is a lot of things mixed into it, and from that comes this, these longer term feelings of what we call stress, right? There's like the body is feeling the fatigue or consequences of these chemical processes over and over and over and over again, or the strength or intensity of them is causing the body to, store some stuff in some, uncomfortable ways. And when you get them triggered, you have reactions is a way of putting it, right? In Scientology, we call this restimulation. That we talked in the e-meter video about, probably where some of this stuff is coming from in terms of your past. But it has to do with your brain trying to predict your environment and trying to help you navigate your life so you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. At the end of the day, that's kind of a way of looking at what this is all about, at least as far as I see it. So when those times are happening, where your brain is throwing you into a fight or flight, anxiety-ridden mode of thinking or acting, and you're suffering from that, or from the consequences of that, you have a panic attack. Not panic attack, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go that far with this advice, okay? Let me pull that right back. Panic attacks you need medical advice and attention, and I'm not even going to pretend to go there. But regular day-to-day stress, regular day-to-day anxiety, that kind of thing, that's really what I'm talking about today. So here's my list of 20 different things. We're going to run through these that can help relieve some of that stress, right? You got chemicals in the body that are going wild, and you're having thoughts and ideas, and it's just, what can you do to bring the temperature down or bring the dial down? First off, of course, is practicing what we call mindfulness, which can be exercised by meditation. You can sit and just chill. The only danger with meditation is that you put yourself into like trance-like states, or get some Ganzfeld, thing going where you're seeing or hearing hallucinatory stuff. You don't want to be doing that kind of thing if you're going to be, inducing, uncomfortable or I don't want to say altered states, but if you kind of get the idea of there are more constructive places for your mind to be, and more maybe trance-like, not so great places for you to be, so beware of that with meditation. But practicing mindfulness helps to stay grounded in the present moment, and it's really being in the present moment that is the point of all of it. It's not to, send your spirit out to, interact with your chakras. It's to, kind of ground yourself, if anything. If you imagine yourself as an electric circuit, which you're not, but if you imagine it, right, and you kind of want to send that into the ground, just, right, shut some of that down. That can help reduce some stress and bring some emotional regulation. Oh boy, does a relationship with animals help? Yes, it does. Yeah, that would be funny. You guys are talking about a debate between Trump and Harris and stuff. Yeah, I know. It's the same thing. I know. It's lots of opinions flying around out there, and it's healthy that they are. Okay, super healthy. I'm actually right now. I'm okay with all of this tumult because we haven't had the Democratic National Convention, and the nominee hasn't been done yet. So all of this talk right now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm like walking on a tightrope as to where it's going to go, but it's going to go somewhere, and hopefully all this talk results in more activity, so people are getting more busy with this, paying more attention to it, and we get more people voting. That's really at the end of the day what I hope happens from all this. All right, so getting back to our stress exercises here. In addition to your sort of mindful meditation, sort of state of mind, is breathing exercises. How do you get there? What do you do? Well, breathing is, as Mr. Miyagi says, really the heart and soul of life. It's where all life kind of begins, right? You breathe in and out and in and out. And it sounds, like a trope. It's not. It's really, 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 really good advice. It really is, right? If you're in a moment and you are feeling uncomfortable in that moment and you don't know what to do, change your breathing. Take control. There's different levels of why that's helpful, right? You're taking control of something. You feel out of control, and here's something you can control: your breathing. Sometimes it can take an effort to get control of it, but you can do so. It proves that to yourself. And it changes how your body's regulating itself when you change something as significant as your breathing. You can fool your brain into changing its state just based on how you're breathing. In other words, if you're sitting there, hyperventilating, you can, okay, I got to calm down, right? And you bring it down, and your brain goes, oh, okay, we're not hyperventilating now. I can dial it down a little bit, right? That's what I mean when I say stuff like that. I'm not trying to play a doctor there. It's just, that kind of obvious stuff. Another thing that also will get you there in terms of the mindfulness thing or getting more in the moment would be physical activity. Okay, get up, do something. Regular exercise, walking, running, yoga, anything, right? Can help it get in the blood flow, can help the arteries stretch and get your, muscles moving around and that kind of thing. It tells the brain different things, which gets it into different states. And it can help, again, change your emotional state. If you think of your emotions as a body state, which they are, your body's in a certain state of operation, your lungs are going a certain rate, your blood is flowing at a certain rate, your muscles are at a certain amount of tension, there's sweat or not, your adrenaline is going or not. These all contribute to how we feel emotions, as well as all the thinking stuff that is activated as a result of or core, at the same time as these physical reactions. Isn't it fascinating stuff? So if you change how your body's doing or what it's doing, then you can change how you're thinking. That easy. Sounds easy, I'm making it sound easy. It's not always easy, but it is workable. This stuff does work. The thing with breathing that I will say is not necessarily to fall back on or depend on one kind of breathing, as maybe change your breathing. Notice how you're breathing and then do something different. Because that's really what you're looking for, is a change. If you're hyperventilating, try to bring it down. If you're shallow breathing, try to take some deep breaths. If you can moderate your breathing to an average because it's too high or too low, great, do that. Whatever you do it under your control. That would be what I would suggest as the way to take, is to change the emotional state. Okay. Let's see here. This is an interesting one, only because here's where you can change your brain directly rather than doing it through breathing or muscles or anything or activity. You could do it by forcing yourself into a different activity of a creative nature. Sometimes really super hard to do when you're not feeling creative, but it is an outlet and it can be a wonderful way. Even if you do have to force yourself to start with, it can be a way of engaging a different part of your brain than is operational when you're in freak out mode. or anxiety mode, then you can, it's like shifting gears. You can almost feel it creak in your head, right? You can almost feel the shift. And that can cause you to shift your emotional state as well. So drawing, painting, writing, playing some music, listening to some music, you know, even if it's as simple as taking a walk, listening to some music, you know, that could help change the situation. Not guaranteed to, but it could help. Journaling, also another way of engaging other parts of the brain. Your writing part is different from, you know, other parts of your thinking parts. In order to write, you have to engage parts of your brain that you're not engaging in when you're in the fear mode, right? This is often why when you dream, you don't write things down. It's because that part of your brain ain't operating while you're sleeping. I thought that was the most fascinating piece of information I think almost anyone's ever given me about neuroscience. It's the most, you know, like, wait, yeah, you never write anything down when you dream, do you? Huh. And that's why, because you're just not, that part of the brain ain't going. Okay, anyway, that's journaling, okay? Of course, support networks, social support. Connecting with supportive friends, family, support groups, right? Anything that's going to give you comfort and understanding and support. And any level of it all, even if it's just being with you, you know, you don't need, sometimes isn't it funny how you don't need to talk to feel supported from somebody? You know, who said you need trained ears in order to have somebody listen to you, right? But even so, sometimes, you know, the comfort comes just from being in the same space as somebody else as you, and they're just there with you, and it's all cool, you know? So any kind of level of social support you can get your hands on while, you know, that's happening might help change the situation. Obviously, therapy and counseling will directly address or could directly address any problems or issues causing anxiety or stress. Now, this one gets the short shrift. I know I do give it short shrift sometimes. I very much do in my real life. I can be a very undisciplined person when it comes to eating. And, you know, I don't know why you guys don't already know that about me. But I will still very hypocritically put this out there because I'm talking to myself through all of this. I hope you guys know that. That all of this is just as mirrored to me as it is to you guys. Healthy lifestyle, right? Now, obviously, I joke about it. I have gotten so much better over the years, but balanced diet, adequate sleep, avoiding substances that are going to, you know, that are going to mess with or disrupt your emotional well-being, right? If you know that alcohol is bad for you because it puts you in a bad mood, gives you headaches, gives you physical problems or something like that, then drinking alcohol, you know, is something that you should avoid. I get headaches from it. I can't stand it. Used to love it. But alcohol is not really much of a solution for me. It's more of it creates other problems. Maybe, you know, for some people, pot is like that. Other people, it's the opposite. So it's all dependent on you. There is no generalized, you know, well, get off the drugs or don't take any drugs or, you know, it's whatever's best for you. But you know what's best for you when it comes to that stuff. And there is a certain degree of discipline necessary in engaging in this step, but it can be really helpful. And don't discount the sleep. And don't necessarily, it's one thing to realize that I'm finding with myself, my wife, some people I talk to and consult with, this is surprisingly more than I thought would be a problem. As you get older, you might need more sleep. Surprise, you know, and I don't mean 90. I mean, like, you know, rolling into your 50s or your 60s, a nap every now and again, you know, like you might need to chill a little bit. And I mean, get actual sleep during the day or at night, or get more hours of sleep during your nocturnal time. That's a thing. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, cool. You guys can debate about a presidential appointment. That'll be fun. Okay, grounding techniques. Okay, this is something I wanted to comment on. I thought you guys might enjoy this. Anything focusing on the senses. For example, touching something that's textured, putting your hands on something, listening to calming sounds, right? What's that AMSR stuff that people listen to maybe to calm themselves? Can help bring one back to the present moment. That would be the idea, is to, again, mindfulness, right? Who said mindfulness is only accomplished by sitting in a chair and going, Om? You know, you can go put your hands on some things. You know, we used to, again, don't do the Scientology thing of like over and over again for hours on end. But you know, one of the funnest things that that I did one time as a Scientologist, which I think is perfectly harmless and kind of fun, is to put your hands on something, put your hands on a surface, and then feel your hand through the surface. Don't feel the surface with your hand, feel your hand, right? It's a trippy feeling if you do it. It's just an imaginary thing, but it's, you know, don't give any credibility to spiritual sensations or something. It's just a fun mental script flip that can feel funny. I certainly felt it was funny. Anyway, anything that'll, again, get you into your time. Yeah, that's the other thing. Xian also reminds me here that sometimes your sleep ends up getting broken up. And that's okay. My point is, it might change. And, you know, if you're lamenting, but I used to only have to get 6 hours. Yeah, well, you know, join the club. We all used to only have to get 6 hours or 5 or none. Okay. Relaxation techniques. This is a real proactive one. Literally taking a warm bath, practicing muscle relaxation, or using aromatherapy. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and endorse, you know, bizarre pseudoscience, but I will say that if you can get, again, touchy-feely with your environment, taking a warm bath with some Epsom salts or some smellies or whatever would be, you know, sometimes it's just the most relaxing, wonderful thing you can do for yourself. Go get yourself a massage, you know, this kind of thing. Okay. Now, on the reverse side of changing things up, there's also another longer term, you know, short term, but more than a day kind of term of activity you can engage in that might help. Again, it's kind of a discipline sort of thing. It requires a little bit of commitment, but it is literally putting some kind of schedule in or some kind of routine or regularity where maybe none exists or it's not as routine as it could be, or maybe you feel it should be. This, again, is all up to you. 100% up to you. These are just suggestions. So creating and sticking to daily routines. Now this has been where my phone has been my biggest ally, by the way, is Google Calendar and just putting events and tasks. That's as complicated as I get. I don't have special apps. I don't go into, you know, creating whole libraries of daily activities and stuff. I'm not that guy. But you know, getting up a whiteboard right by my desk, and the Google Calendar on my phone, and this becomes my taskmaster and my reminder and my helper, so I don't have to keep it all in my head. I don't keep anything in my head anymore. You know, hardly at all, except for what's coming over the next couple days. But I can look on my phone and there it is, and I can have a daily to-do that is not on my phone, but is my task list of stuff for the day, and I write that the night before. And every day I do that, and I've got it in my head when I'm going to sleep at night, what my plan is for the next day. I do not always pull it off the next day. Some days the next day I wake up and I'm feeling a little depressed and it ain't happening. But I'll still have those tasks to chew on, and I can get some parts of them done or something, because there's some planning there that can help pull me through some of the depression or some of the anxiety or some of the stress that I might be feeling for whatever reason that I'm triggered that day, whether it's cyclic or whether it's diurnal, which means, you know, you're down in, you know, one part of the day and up the next part of the day kind of thing, diurnal. You know, because I kind of have days like that. And And I ain't getting shit done in the morning, forget it, right? I don't wake up and really get going until about 4 o'clock some days. I don't understand it, but it's just how some certain days go with me. And you can just forget it at 10, 11, 12, 11 a.m. I want to work, but it's not happening, right? The ADHD or the depression or whatever kicks in. And so having a task list or having some idea of what my day was going to be gives me, at least when I've got moments where I can get something done, something to focus on. Right? That's super personal, I guess, but that's how I've sort of dealt with some of that. Okay, cool. I'll definitely eat ice cream every 3 to 4 hours. Yes. Yes. And again, my to-do list is not a battle plan like we used to write in Scientology with all these conditioned formulas and all this nonsense. And and sometimes I get it all done. Sometimes I don't get it all done. I don't kill myself over my task list. It's just a way to structure and organize my thoughts, because sometimes my thoughts need some structure. And that's why I wanted to harp on that for a minute. I thought maybe some of you might encounter that as well. Now, this is the toughest one, I think, on the list. Probably the most powerful one, but its power is is negated by, the fact that it's a solution to, that the problem prevents the solution, okay? And where I'm going with this, of course, is limiting your exposure to triggers. Right? We have triggers for a reason, right? Because we put ourselves in the same situations over and over and over again. We're a little silly that way as human beings, but sometimes we don't have any choice. We have to go to work, or we have to have this relationship, or we have to have this family member, or we have to have this situation that repeats in our lives, and there's nothing we can really do about it, or we think we can't. And unless you hit the full reset button on your life and move or change jobs or change friendships or whatever, and maybe for whatever reason that's not possible, or worst of all the worst, it's not something external, it's something internal. And and there's some habits we have, or needs we have, or addictions we have, and we're stuck with them, and we're really, really, really stuck with them. And those problems can prevent the solutions we know we need to enact. And this is probably one of the biggest ones where I see that. Glimmers are better. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Exion. So being mindful of and avoiding triggers when possible can help manage emotional responses. Now I'm going to give you the toughest one I know of these days, and that is social media addiction. Right? Why not? Let's just jump into the deep end. I'm not going to soapbox about this. I'm just going to say that we all know how powerful the sort of symbiotic relationship that we've created with these devices called phones or smartphones or smart devices. It's almost impossible to navigate the world these days without it. And so we have this very dependent relationship with the machinery and with the internet and with our digital versions of ourselves. And this extends to our social media world. Most of us have a Facebook or an Instagram or an X Twitter or a TikTok or, a mix of the above, or we're Gab or, and then the dating ones you want to talk up, go do those. By the way, a very, very funny story every year around every election cycle around the Republican National Convention is the fact that Grindr breaks down or overloads around the area of the RNC. And I think that is one of the funniest things I read every time every time the election cycle happens. Anyway, so again, our social selves. It's hard to break away from that. It's hard to not doom scroll, as they call it, or go over your wall or look over your things. Even if you're looking just for good stuff, you're going to get bad stuff too. And sometimes you're going to get things that are incredibly triggering. It is now more possible than it has been ever before to be able to control the settings on your apps to not necessarily give you all the horrible. But you're still going to get the ads, and you're going to get inundated with triggering or potentially triggering material. And it's really, really hard to to break away from that. But if you can, right, if reading the news only upsets you, it's probably a good idea to stop reading the news. And you go, but I have to stay informed. Not that way. Figure out a better way to get informed. There are other ways. I mean, there's long form content, there's other media, there's other ways. Go look and see what other ways exist and cut out the ones that are constantly causing you emotional turmoil. You're not putting your head in the ground or your head in the sand by doing that, by protecting yourself emotionally. Don't now go be willfully ignorant of the world, but I know you guys get my point. So that's that one. All right. Positive affirmations. Sometimes they work. Those affirmations of L. Ron Hubbard were a little psychotic, but you can give yourself better ones. I'm good enough. I'm strong enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. Sometimes you can give other people affirmations too, and it works better, I think, with other people than it does with ourselves. But going out and doing volunteer work, again, real hard to do sometimes when you're in the doldrums. But if you can get out there and help other people in some fashion, wonderful way to go. On the other hand, if you're not in the mood to, and people are demanding you do things you don't want to do, setting boundaries, learning to say no, putting up, nope. If that's the cause of the emotional upset, or will only make it worse by going out or forcing yourself to be social, because you're not social, you're not an extrovert, you're an introvert, and you don't want to go out, that's okay too. It all depends on what you need, right? Okay, but this is the one that might be the only thing on the list tougher than the avoiding your triggers one, actually, now that I think about it, and that is self-compassion. Be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Stop insulting yourself all the time. Yeah, okay, so those things. Okay, and then the other one, let's see if there's any last thing here. Oh yeah, and then of course there is, again, as an attention shift, as a brain shift, and as a way of tricking things a little bit maybe, is you can do creative work, but you can also go do learning. Go do some learning. Go learn something new, anything. Of course, something that might interest you will stick, but put your brain in learning mode, and it won't be in anxiety mode necessarily. Those are some ideas. That's the list. That's what I have to share with you this week on all of that. I hope now and into the future that list or those suggestions might be useful or helpful in some fashion. That's what this was all about tonight. So I mentioned to you that the podcast this week, it will be with Reverend Dr. Ken Garrett. He was one of the organizers of the Portland Safe Portland conference that I went and spoke at a couple months ago. He is a wonderful man to interact with and get to know, and you will interact and get to know him if you watch my podcast tomorrow, this Speaking of Cults podcast. So check that out. And Sunday, we will do our Q&A as usual, 1 o'clock live. I hope you guys are checking out the Straight Up and Vertical as well every Monday. That goes up, and that's me and Tony giving you a wrap-up on Scientology. And I also wanted to put a plug in, by the way, for my other YouTube channel. I have a whole other channel that is called Critical Clips, which are just snippet answers from my Q&A shows mainly and other sources that are there for you. And there are over 1,000 clips. I think it's like 1,200 something at this point. Individual answers to questions y'all have about Scientology, critical thinking, cults, cult recovery. It's all in there. Years and years of stuff. And I've just been snipping for years now and building that clips channel. So I would recommend, if you are interested in my work and interested in answers to your questions about stuff, and I'm all about good answers. I hope I'm doing the job. You can check those out. All right, good. So for this week, the critical bias, the critical cognitive bias we're going to cover this week is belief bias. If a conclusion supports your existing beliefs, you'll rationalize anything that supports it. You want to know how people can do what they're doing these days ideologically? If a conclusion supports your existing beliefs, you'll rationalize anything that supports it. It's difficult for us to set aside our existing ideas to consider the true merits of an argument. In practice, this means that our beliefs become impervious to criticism and are perpetually reinforced. A useful thing to ask is, when and how did I get this belief? This is a great card. This is one of the best ones. Right? Your street goes right back to your street epistemology. Always be willing to ask questions of yourself and others. Always. Right? Think. It's not illegal yet. All right, that's best advice I have for you guys moving into our week. Thank you very much for coming around and listening to me babble on here. You guys are awesome. I'm going to, of course, encourage that you support the channel and support me in my efforts here. I could really use the support through Patreon, PayPal, Venmo, whatever. And of course, you can also contact me at any time for some one-on-one consultation. I am more than happy to help you with any issues you might be having, especially around coercive control. That is, after all, my expertise. All right. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.